This crochet granny square bag is such a fun way to turn your squares into something that you'll actually use. In this tutorial, I'll show you how to join your granny squares step by step, all in one continuous join to minimize yarn ends. And you can make this bag in 2 different sizes. While we are using my pink lemonade mosaic granny squares today, this join can be used for joining other granny squares in sets of 3 to make a bag. Before we start, you'll want to have your 3 finished granny squares, your yarn to join your squares together, your bag strap, your scissors, and your crochet hook. I am using a 5.5mm or I crochet hook today. If you still need the granny square pattern, you can view it on my blog, and I've got printable versions in my shops. There's one for just the square pattern and another that includes the squares and these joining instructions with a photo tutorial. For your joining yarn, I recommend using the same color as your last round in your square if you want your join to be less visible. If you'd like your join to stand out, you can use another color from your square. I'm going to be using my color A yarn from my square to join my squares today. So let's dive on in. To start joining our granny squares together, we're going to start by placing 2 of our squares next to each other, lining up the stitches on the last round, and your squares have to have the right side up. When you're looking at the pink lemonade mosaic squares, this is what the right side looks like, and this is what the wrong side looks like. When you're using the mosaic squares, it's easier, I find it easier anyways to line up my stitches because I can use these post stitches and these bobbles to ensure that they are lined up appropriately. This is the 6-inch square. For the 12-inch square, the outside has these post stitches and these little triangle motifs here that make it easier to line up your work. To start joining our squares, after we have our stitches lined up, we're going to find the stitch at the bottom of your squares that match up and that are closest to you. So you want to make sure that these are as lined up as possible. It doesn't have to be super exact, but we want to get as close as we can. And you're going to take a look at your bottom stitch. I'm going to start on the right hand square, and I'm going to insert my hook into the back loop only of the stitch closest to me at the bottom of my square. So this one here, back loop only. If you're not sure what the back loop only is, take a look at the top of your stitch. We've got 2 loops. The one closest to you is the front loop. The one furthest from you is the back loop. So insert your hook into the back loop only of that first stitch on the first square, and then find the matching stitch on the opposite square and insert your hook into the back loop only of that square as well. All right, so you're essentially joining the hooks or the squares right now with just your hook. What you're going to do is grab your yarn and with a slip knot already on it, and you're going to place the slip knot on your hook. You want to make sure that you bring your yarn behind the squares while you're working, or at least in front if your join looks like this, because if you have it in front of the squares, it will make your seam kind of pop up a little, and the goal of the seam is for it to lay flat. So we're going to take our slip knot and we're going to pull it through both loops on our hook to join our yarn. Now I like to turn my seam kind of this way to work. I find that a little easier, but if you don't, you can continue to work in the manner that you'd like, but just make sure that you're working your stitches the same way. So when you're joining your squares together, you want to always try to start on the same side that you started with. So I started with my right square, so I'm going to always pick up my first back loop on my right. So I'm going to go back loop only into the very next stitch on the square there, then find the matching stitch on the second square and go into the back loop only there, yarn over and pull that loop through all 3 loops on your hook. So 1, 2, 3, and that's our first slip stitch. And we're going to do that again. We're going to go to the back loop only on our first square in the next stitch here, and on the second square, the back loop only of the very next stitch. And we're going to yarn over and pull that through all 3 loops on our hook to do another slip stitch. And again, back loop only of the next stitch on the first square, back loop only of the next stitch on the second square. Yarn over and pull that through all 3 loops on your hook. And so I'm just going to pause for just a second to show you that what this looks like. This creates a flat join for your squares. And we're just going to continue to work this back loop only slip stitch all the way up to the next corner. So we'll do it 1 or 2 more times together, and then I'll have you pause and meet me at the corner. So in the back loop only of the very next stitch on the first square, back loop only of the next stitch on the second square, then yarn over and pull through all 3 loops on your hook. I'll do it one more time, and I just want to remind you to make sure that your yarn is behind your work here, because if it's in front when you're picking up these loops, it will cause your stitch to not lay flat. So again, we're going to go back loop only on the very next stitch on the first square, then back loop only on the very next stitch on the second square. And again, see how my yarn is being held behind what I'm doing here. Then we're going to yarn over and pull that loop through all 3 loops on your hook. Okay, so there's our join so far. And so if you'd like to pause your video and continue to work that back loop only slip stitch into each pair of stitches on your squares up to the corner, I'll meet you back here when you get to the corner to show you what we'll do next. All right, so I'm at my corner and I have this nice flat seam joining my 2 squares together. So for the next step, I'm just going to pull my hook out of the way here and give myself a little bit of yarn here so it doesn't unravel. Because what we want to do is we want to fold these top corners down to meet the opposite corner to create a triangle like this. And I'll do that again. Do one side at a time, just folding them under so it looks like a triangle. Then we're going to flip our work over. So what we're going to do now is we want to continue to make sure that our stitches line up, and we're going to continue to work our back loop only slip stitch across this square to the next corner. So we'll do a little bit of that together. Now that our piece is turned, this spot here in the corner is probably the trickiest bit, just in terms of keeping things managed and held together. So again, we're just going to go into the very next stitch here, back loop only on the first square, back loop only in the next stitch on the second square, and then slip stitch. And again, first square, then the second, and then slip stitch. And I do want to caution you when you're doing your slip stitch not to pull your yarn too tight, because if you do, it will cause your fabric to cinch and you won't have a nice flat join and your bag will kind of look a little wavy. So we just want to have nice relaxed slip stitches. So back loop only on the first square and on the next, and then slip stitch. So if you'd like to pause your video and continue to work your slip stitch in the back loop only all the way till you get to this point where the 2 corners meet here, right here, then I'll meet you back here and show you what to do next. All right, so I'm at my next corner. Your piece should look like this. It's just a kind of folded triangle here, and we're ready to join our 3rd square. So we're going to grab our 3rd square and we're going to fold that in half. I personally find this easier to do folded. If you can fold it later, but I find it easier to manage folding right now. So I've got it folded in half, and what we're going to do is we want to line up the stitches on the 3rd square with your bottom square here. So I'm going to kind of shift my bag to make it a little easier to work on. And what we're going to do is we're going to continue to do our back loop only slip stitch, but we're going to work down this edge to join these squares together. So we're going to go, because we're joining new squares, I'm going to just continue to count this as my first square and make this continue to be my second square. So I'm going to make sure my stitches are nice and lined up. Then I'm going to find the very next stitch here. So looking at my post stitch, I've got my post stitch and then 2 stitches, my post stitch and 2 stitches here. So I want to go into this second stitch here. We're going to go into the back loop only. And then we're going to go into the back loop only of the very next stitch on your second square here. And see, I almost did this mistake, and I do this all the time. And this is why I keep warning you. See how my yarn has come to the front of my work? Watch what happens if I do my slip stitch without noticing. I start to have this loop of yarn underneath. It's going to lift up my seam and make it not look the same as the rest. So I'm going to pull that out. And I did that because I didn't turn my work in a way that was natural for me here. I'm going to try and do it so you can see, but also where it's natural for me to work. So back loop only in that first square, back loop only in the second square, and then slip stitch. Okay. Now we're going to continue to do that along this seam. So back loop only of the next stitch on the first square, back loop only of the next stitch on the second, and then yarn over and pull through all 3. We're just going to continue to do this down the piece to the corner. So if you'd like to pause and continue to do your back loop only slip stitch to the corner, I'll meet you back here in just a moment to show you what you'll do when you get to the next corner. All right, so I'm at the next corner here, and what we need to do is flip our work over to continue to finish this seam. And we're going to continue in the same manner we've been doing. Back loop only, slip stitch through both squares until we get to the center point here. The center point here is when we're going to do something a little different. So if you'd like to pause your video and slip stitch in the back loop only of both squares until you get to that center point here, I'm going to show you what we'll do next. All right, so I'm back at my center point, and you can see that I don't have any more stitches to work in this center square. What we're going to be doing is we're going to kind of close this gap in between the 2 side squares, and we're going to start continue on and create a trim for our bag. So to do that, I'm going to insert my hook through the very first slip stitch that we made here. I'm going to insert through the top. We're not going under the loops. We're going through the center at the top of the slip stitch, through to the back of your work, and then we're going to slip stitch there. Then we're going to start working in the back loop only of the stitches along this edge, and we're going to continue to slip stitch. Just the back loop only slip stitch. We're only working through the 1 square now because this is the top opening of our bag. So we're just going to continue to work 1 back loop slip stitch into each stitch around. We're going to have to flip our bag over when we get to the corner. And when you get to this center point here, I'm going to meet you back here to show you how we're going to transition up the other side of the bag. So now I've finished my slip stitch edging here. I'm back to the middle of my square. And if you take a look, you should have 1 slip stitch that's kind of like right in the dead middle of this center point here. What we're going to do to transition to the other side of the bag is we're going to insert our hook through the top of that bag, that slip stitch there, and out through the other side of our fabric. That might be a little tough because we're how much fabric we have there, but we're going to just push through the top to the other side of the bag, and then we're going to slip stitch. Then we're going to kind of turn our work. So we're working up this last edge here, and we're just going to back loop only slip stitch into each stitch along the square. Again, you're going to have to flip your work over to finish this other side. And when you get back to the center point on this first side of the bag, come back to me and I'm going to show you how we're going to fasten off. Right, so I'm just going to continue to do back loop only, slip stitch here, and I'll meet you back here in just a moment. All right, so I'm back to the center of my first side of my bag, and what we're going to do now is fasten off our work. So I'm going to grab my scissors here, and I'm going to leave a yarn tail of at least 6 inches. I usually go a little bit longer just to be on the safe side. And then I'm going to pull my yarn all the way through that last stitch. We want to do that gently. We don't want to pull so tightly that we tighten that last slip stitch. We just want it to come through the stitch and leave the original tension of this last slip stitch intact. Then we're going to take our tapestry needle and thread it onto the yarn end here. And we're going to do a invisible join. Now, I like to skip this center stitch and work over this last stitch here. So what we're going to do is we're going to insert our hook, We're going to skip this stitch here and we're going to insert our needle under both loops of this stitch here. We're going to pull our yarn all the way through so it replicates the look of that last stitch. Then we're going to insert our hook through, then we're going to insert our needle through the top of that last stitch we worked and pick up the back loop only and pull our yarn to the opposite side of the work. Now I'm going to pull that so that way it looks like I've replicated the slip stitch here. We want the same tension, and what that does is also pull the bag together so you don't have a gap in the center. Then you can weave in your ends, and if you're using the pre-made strap like I am, just going to take my bag strap and I'm going to insert it through the very corner of each side of these open-ended squares. So when I say open-ended, I mean the end with the open edge. So I'm just inserting my strap through the top of both sides. You don't need an eyelet or anything. You can just literally put it through the fabric in your bag. And there you have it. There is our finished granny square bag. I hope that you found this tutorial helpful. I just want to show you quickly before you go the 2 different bag sizes. This is the 6-inch square bag. It makes a kind of like a small day purse bag size. And then we also have the 12-inch square bag, which is more of like a tote bag size. I use this to take like stuff to the beach and stuff. It's really handy. But I wanted to show you the 2 bags side by side. So I hope that you found this tutorial helpful. If you did, please hit that like button. Please consider subscribing to this channel. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section below. And if you like free crochet patterns, please check my blog, theloopylamb.com, where I've got hundreds of free crochet patterns, many of which have step-by-step video tutorials just like this one. Thanks so much for watching, friends. Happy crocheting, and I'll see you next time.